The Beef Market Update with Ann Dunford on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by AFSC's Cattle Price Insurance Program, Haney Farms, and Gateway Livestock Exchange. And we've seen some recent price movements up in the U.S. Specifically, you were talking earlier about Texas. What's happening?
Well, lots of excitement. Commodities, generally speaking, strong this week. Corn was something we talked about earlier, but what's happened here just today in the live cattle market in the U.S. has been stronger, and that's given the cattle feeder in the U.S. enough ammunition or leverage, if you will, to trade cattle today at 102 to 102.5 basis Texas. And remember, their trade last week was 97, 97.5, so we've seen a $5 jump here in under a week.
Why the jump?
Well, again, we've got lots of activity going on in strong futures markets, so you've got that side of it most certainly adding some optimism. On the other side, we've got a period in here now through end of November where supplies in both the US and Canada feedlot inventory supplies are smaller, and so we've got supply in the favor of the cattle feeder today as well. And having said that, the packer sure looks like he wants to be able to continue to maintain kills at fairly aggressive levels, so he's not backing off kills. He's gone out and said, I got to sell the beef for more money, and guess what? That's exactly what he's done. The US choice cut out today up to 160. A week ago it was at 152, 153, so big jumps all the way along the pipeline.
So a question that right away jumps to my mind is, the packer is going to have to sell those cattle for more money.
Yes.
Something doesn't seem right here because we're still talking a lot about a real hurt U.S. economy. Those two things don't match up.
Well, and I guess over time we'll see what happens here. Are they sustainable long term? That's the question you're asking. And the higher prices will get passed along for a period of time. Having said that, we also do look at more cattle supplies coming available coming December, January, February. So it's we're going to have a situation where tight supplies now, they'll most certainly force it along in higher prices down the road. Don't forget, we've got an export market in the U.S. It's been very aggressive this year. U.S. beef exports are up 17% as of last week's report. So even though it's not a big percentage of their total net supply, it's most certainly a strong supporting factor. So we can talk about the North American market continuing to be stagnant from an economic perspective, but at the same time, prices are going to be relevant with what's going on in the world scale. You've got a very weak U.S. dollar that makes them very strong exporters.
So if the U.S. exports are up, does that have a negative impact on Canadian exports?
Well, again, remember, our price is U.S. dominated, so our price is going to be based out of the U.S. So I always like to say if it's good for U.S. price, it's good for Canadian price, even with this very strong Canadian dollar we've had of late. So looking at imports and exports, at the bottom line, we've got so much that's going to stay here for domestic supply, and the rest of the market's going to sort itself out, whether it's U.S., whether it's Mexico, whether we're getting a little bit more product into Japan or not. It's slow but coming. So bottom line is, I think the overriding fact is, if it's good for U.S. price, it's good for Canadian price. So
since we have had some upward prices in the U.S., are we going to see those in Canada over the next 2 weeks?
We'll see it today.
Perfect. And so do we, I guess from a Canadian perspective, is that a sustained rally? Like, can we expect these prices to sort of plateau here for a little bit so we can?
Well, again, we've got to go back and still watch fundamentals. I mean, we've had an exciting run on the commodities. Just overall, hedge fund money is up and all those kinds of things. But go back to the fundamentals over the long haul. We've been watching our on-feed numbers, our placement patterns. They've been very stagnant, and that's what we're into right now. Some smaller fat cattle supplies, but that's going to change as we get into the time frame where these grass cattle will be ready for market, and that'll be December, January, February. We know there's going to be more cattle by then, and so at that point in time, the packer will try to take some of this money back. I'm quite certain of that. So we'll take it for what it is today. We've got a good rally going on, and that's going to add fuel to the fire, especially in the midst of this calf market.
Well, and you mentioned the calf market. That's where I was going to go next. The last couple times we talked about waiting for the calves to come to town. They're starting to come. What are the prices like?
Prices are very strong. Of course, remember, we've got lots of empty pens out there because we have been very slow in placing calves all through the summer, partly because of conditions. And secondly, then we had very small feeder offerings because grass conditions were so good, moisture conditions were good. So we've got a situation where calves are starting to move, demand is strong, we're keeping these calves in Western Canada, they're not being exported into the US whatsoever, even though basis levels, the spread between the US and Canadian prices are very small right now, which would historically suggest they could go to the States, they're staying here. So that situation is very strong. We've got prices, like I say, we're hearing prices in the 160, 170, 180 area on some of these light calves, and easily into the 30s and 40s on the midweight calves. So very, very strong pricing.
And is that strong pricing on the back of an expectation that prices are going to go higher from here? Or what is that on the backs of?
Sure, you're looking at the live cattle futures market today. It's not just October and December that are up, so are April and June and August next summer. So absolutely, the strength that's in the futures market today is most certainly playing into the cards of higher calf prices today.
Okay. And thanks a lot. We'll talk to you again in 2 weeks.
You're welcome.